You may need to take out your writing equation notes from last week to kind of remember how we solve something like this. But I want you to find how they are alike and how they are different. I'll give you a few minutes, 3 to 5-ish minutes to do that, and then we'll come back and talk about it, and then we'll start our notes for today. Start with differences. How is this one different than that one? Can be obvious things, can be things that we solve to figure out. What do you mean by that?
They're just different equations.
Okay, so the equations look different. Anything else?
The one on the left is not parentheses.
The one on the left, no parentheses. That can be a difference for both. So this one doesn't have parentheses, this one does have parentheses. Anything else?
The one on the left is -1, and the other one is +3.
I'll just burn that, okay?
They both have 2/3.
They both have 2/3. What is 2/3 in our equation? The slope. Anyone solve this one? Time for you guys. So if you solve them, they're the same problem. Or if you were to like put this into Desmos, they would graph off of each other, they would be the same line. Which means they would have the same y-intercept. Okay. So we've talked about slope, how to find it in different ways. We talked about writing from a graph when you have horizontal and vertical lines, when you have a point and slope, when you have 2 points, all the different things. Now we're going to graph. So you have notes in front of you. If you have your own ruler, I would take that out. If you don't, go back to the talke cart, whatever numbers you're at, grab one from there. Ruler, but it's there to help you. As we graph these, we need to, one, make sure the equations we are about to do are in slope-intercept form. So if they're not, we have to put them in slope-intercept form. Okay, so make sure the equations are in slope-intercept form first. If they're already there, then we can skip that step. Plot the y-intercept because that will be the easiest. We can spot that easily. Then we're going to find our slope and plot that. So before we were finding our slope from a graph, now we're going to actually graph the slope. Then once we have, we're going to graph as many points as possible on the slope. And then once we have all of our points, we're connected with a line. So let's try this first one. So this is already in slope-intercept form. So we can start with our y-intercept, 3. If the graphs are hard to read, outline your x and y axis. Just make them thicker, bigger, easier to read. And then our y-intercept is going to go on our y-axis at +3. Go ahead and put a point at 3. What is our slope? -1. So what directions could we go to get a negative slope? down and can we go both of those? A down and a left, would that make a negative?
No.
That would make a positive. So we need down and right. So from here, we're going to go down one, right one, as many times as possible. And put a point. Down one, right one. Keep doing that until you run out of space. But we can also do the opposite. We can also go up and left. So back to your y-intercept. Go up one, left one, as many times as possible. Once you have filled up your graph, you can't go any further. You can use your ruler to line this up and draw a line through them. Try to make it as straight as possible. And when you draw your line, make sure it has arrows at the end, because lines go on forever and ever in both directions.
If you go down and right, you also have to go up and left, or you just can't pick one.
So if the graph allows you to do both, do both. But if you can only go in one direction, like you run out of space in one direction, or you can't go in one direction, you can only do the other, then you could do the top. Right? So we're not writing the equation. We don't have to find the slope or anything like that. We just have to be able to figure out what our slope and y-intercept are and use it to graph it. Do you have any questions so far? Alright, let's try the next one. Y-intercept is -4, so on your y-axis, go down to -4, put a point. Your slope is what? 3, and it's a +3. I didn't say this before. All of your whole numbers, put that over 1. That way you have a rise and a run. Positives, we can go what direction? Right. So we have to go up or down first. Up. So we can go up and right. So we would go up 3, right 1, as many times as possible. Now, I'm going to put the others, but in this case, we won't be using it, because I can also do the opposite, go down and left. But from the y-intercept, I can't go down 3 unless I add more graph, which I don't want to do. So this is enough. You can use your ruler to connect the points and draw a line. And your line should look something like that. Do you have any questions so far? Let's try a couple more, then we'll move on. Number 3, what's our first step? The y-axis, what about it?
Place it at +2.
Yes, put a point at +2 on the y-axis. Then your slope is actually a fraction. It's positive, so the same directions as before. If it helps you to draw these, keep drawing them. So we can go up 2 and to the right 5. And then if we go back to our y-intercept, we can also do the opposite. Go down 2 and left 5. Sometimes you'll have a bunch of points. Sometimes you'll have not as many. Sometimes you may only have 2. It depends on the graph. Once you have all of your points, go ahead and connect the dots. Use your ruler, make it straight, make a line. did you go over have questions about? Number 8, our y-intercept is positive 3. So go ahead and plot that point. Our slope is negative 1/4. What directions could I go to get a negative? Down and down, not together. Down and right. Down and right. So always remember that down and left are both negatives, negative directions, but if you put them both together, you'll get a positive. Alright, so we can go down 1 and right 4. And then do the opposite. Up 1 and left 4. Do you want to make sure you're writing this down? Connect your points, draw your line. Any others in that 1 through 9 that we didn't finish? Veer and Ivan. 9. Okay. What's your y-intercept in number 9? Don't look, Jacob. 0. So if you don't see anything, you can put a plus 0. You don't have to, but you need to know that it is 0. So that means we're going to start in the middle of the graph at the origin, 0, 0. And then our slope is positive, so we can go what directions to get a positive slope? Up, and right. So this would be up 4 over 1. And then the other directions? Down 4, left 1. And then connect your points with your ruler and make a line. So when you're given your slope-intercept form, it's pretty what word was that going to say? Self-explanatory, short. Standard, the rules are the same. But when it's not in standard form, we have to convert it first and then graph it. So let's try 10. So now we have to think back to how did we get this back in slope-intercept form?
Minus 1x.
Yes, to both sides. But remember, when you do that, we're not combining 4 and x, we're just moving it to the other side. I can also rearrange this so it starts to look like y equals mx plus b. And then the last step.
Minus 2.
Not minus, divide. And we're going to divide everything by 2. So we have y equals, I'm going to rewrite this as negative 1/2 x, because that would be the same, plus 2. So you want to divide everything, simplify everything. That's always going to be your step 1 with these. Now it's back in slope-intercept form, so now we can graph it. Same as before. Y-intercept is 2, so on the y-axis, plot a point at 2. Your slope is negative, so we can go down 1 and right 2 as many times as possible, so fill up your graph. Or we can go up 1 and left 2 as many times as possible, fill up your graph. Once you have all of your points, use your ruler, connect all the points, draw your line. We have time to do one more. Do you have any questions about this? So how would we get this back in y equals mx plus b?
Minus 3x.
Same thing we did here, but now it has a number, so subtract the entire term, 3x to the other side. We can rearrange the negative 6 and the negative 3x. And then
Does that matter if you rearrange
it doesn't matter if the order in which you rearrange it, if you do it now or later, but eventually you need to rearrange it, yes. And then get y by itself. What's our last step? Divide everything by -2, so all your signs are going to change. This is just going to become a fraction, but a positive one now. This is going to become positive, but now 3. There's like a black dot on the graph, ignore that. So we can start at positive 3 on the y-axis. It's positive, so we can go up 3 to the right 2, or down 3 to the left 2. Can we go up 3 to the right 2? No. So just down 3, left 2. As many times as possible. And once you have all your points connected, you can run. We will stop there, do some more when we get back from lunch. And
One more.
okay. Sorry, I meant to say 1. Any others on the page?
Wait, for which page?
12 through 21.
21. Oh,
Okay. Great minds think alike. Alright, think back to how we just solved the other ones before lunch. What would be our first step?
minus 3x.
Yes. Now, when I rewrite this, rearrange it, you can include the 0. You don't need to. You can if you want to. But really, this was just a one step. You didn't need to keep getting y by itself because it's already by itself. You don't need to put the plus 0, but you can. But you do have to remember that your y-intercept is 0, so start there for your y-intercept. And then we have a negative slope. What directions could we go to get a negative slope? Down. Down and right. Down and right. So this would be -3 over 1. So we could go down 3, right 1. Really just once. If we did it twice, we'd be off the graph. And then what other directions?
Up and left.
So up 3, left 1, draw an arrow or a line through all of your points using your Do we have any other questions on this page? I'm going to have you try 1 and then we're going to move on. So try number 20. Do that. Check with the people around you. I'll come around and check if you have questions. And then we'll come back, we'll talk about it, and then we'll move on. So then let me know
This
when
is
that
like
is. Alright, double check your work with mine. Guys, go back to your seats. Do we have any questions about that? No, do you have a question? So I'll talk through what I did. Make sure you have done the same thing or fix it if you haven't. So you should have subtracted 9x to both sides. You can either rearrange it here or at the end. Divide everything by -12. Simplify each piece. So this would just become 1. This would become 3/4. This would become -1. Make sure you're plotted. You have a point plotted at -1, and then you're going up 3 to the right 4 and down 3 to the left 4. Okay. If you have your phones out because you finished, they should be put back away.
Savannah, did it go through? Because I don't see it on the. Oh, I see it now.
Okay, go on to the next page. So we talked about the slopes for horizontal and vertical lines. We talked about how to write the equation for vertical and horizontal lines. But now we need to know how to graph them as well. So I'm going to rewrite our toy box up here. And I'll rewrite what that stands for. So we have horizontal lines have 0 slope and are y equals. Vertical lines have undefined slope and are x equals. If you memorize this, it will help you so much more than trying to think about what it means and all those things. So if we see a y equals, we need to be thinking, is this horizontal or is this vertical? So y equals is horizontal. So at -5 on your y-axis, the graph is a little hard to see. But try to find it through this group. So at -5, put a point. And then you're going to draw a horizontal line straight across. Horizontal, left and right. Same thing for vertical. So for number 8, we have an x equals -1, so x equals has to be a vertical line. So on your x-axis, find when x is -1, put a point, and draw a vertical up and down line. The best of your ability on the graphs. I know they're a little small. Do number 9 and number 10. Did you make a pass? Yeah. native.
Well, yeah, like, you look at this,
Your graphs for 9 and 10 should look something like this. If they don't, fix it. Okay. Let's answer some of these questions. This is to get you in the habit of not only slopes, not only graphs, but slopes and then connecting everything. So if I ask you, what is the slope of y equals 5? Think about your toy bucks. What would the slope of this line be? 0. So y equals have 0 slope. What about the slope of x equals -2? That one is undefined. Now this one's a trick question. What is the slope of x equals 0? It's still undefined. They just threw in that 0 to mess you up. Let's graph both of these, and then we're going to talk about the differences that you see and similarities. So on the left, I'm going to draw y equals 3. On the right, I'm going to draw y equals 3x. So go ahead and do that for both. To the best of your ability, do the slope on this one. And after you have both of them drawn, what do we see as similar? What do we see as different?
One slope is 0 and one is 3 or 1.
I'm not writing these down. I'm just going to repeat them. So things for you to keep in mind. This one has a 0 slope. This one actually has a numerical slope other than 0. What else?
There's more points on the right and the left.
Debatable, because I could make more points along this one at every single x value. That would take too much time. Okay. So then there's more points technically on this one than that one. And also not at the same time, because even though we have these points, there are still x values. Each x value is still being hit. They would just be decimals. Anything else? Like obvious things that stick out? Matt? What about?
there's a difference between the slopes because y equals 3, there's a 0 slope, and with y equals 3, the slope is 0.
Okay. So I think we talked about the numerical slope, but what about the physical, what they look like? So this one does not cross the x-axis at all. This one does. You can say this one is just a straight horizontal line, or this one is a diagonal. So those are things to keep in mind when you see different problems. Y equals 3, you're not going to graph it like this, and vice versa. Okay, go on to the next page. This is the last part of graphing. And this will kind of help us when we get into intercepts, because we'll be doing some of the same things. And that will be what we do next. Alright, so when we graph by intercepts, they will be in standard form. You do not need to change this back to slope-intercept form, so that will get confusing, because some of them won't even say graph by intercepts, but if that's what you choose to do, you can do it that way. Alright, to do this, I'll fill this out and then show you kind of what this is talking about. So it's cover up the y term and solve for x. And then vice versa for number 3, cover up the x term and solve for y. So in this generic example, if I covered up my entire x term, I would just have dy equals c. I would solve this for y and I would get my y-intercept. Same thing here, if I covered up my y term, I have ax equals c, and then I would solve for x, and I would get my x term. So let's practice that. Now when we do intercepts, we're going to go into that a little bit more in depth, but for now, this is fine. So doing this method, let's say I covered up the x term, then just this is left. And then I'm solving for y. So that's going to be my y-intercept at 3 on the y-axis. And then we can do the same thing to find our x. Cover up the y term and write what's left. And then solve for x. You have an x-intercept at -2. With these, you only need 2 points. And you would graph it just like that. Yes. So if you are graphing by intercepts, you should only have 2 points. But if you start graphing by slope, you need multiple points. Questions so far? Let's do another. So let's try number 2. If I'm solving for my y-intercept, I would cover up my x term. What would be left? 2y equals 4. So let's solve it. Divide both sides by 2. Okay, now let's do the same thing for x. If we were solving for x and we covered up the y term, what's left? 1x. Just x, and then the equals 4. So if you get something like this, you do not need to solve. This is your x-intercept. It gave you that. So we are not finding the slope when we are graphing by intercepts. But if you need to find the slope and y-intercept, then you can plot as many points as necessary. Look at the others. See if there are any we want to see and go over and have questions about. Okay. If we were solving for y, what would be left? We covered up, I'm sorry, if we were solving for y. We covered up the x term, it would just be y equals 3. What about for x? If we were solving for x. So this one, they're both just going to be 3. You're not solving for anything. add in extra things. Any others we want to see if you go over add?
5.
If we're solving for y, how would we write that equation? What's left?
Y.
Negative y equals negative 4. So don't forget about that negative. And then divide both sides by negative 1. And then what would your equation be for x? Negative 4. It equals negative 4. What's the rest of that?
Under 1.
4x.
4x. Divide both sides by 4. When you're graphing your lines, even if you're doing it by intercepts, make sure you extend your line all the way through the graph, that it has arrows, all those things. Are there any others you want to see if you go over have questions about? I'm going to give you a few different options that you can be working on. Many of you have not done the slope delta math from 2 weeks ago. Many of you have not done the 2 writing delta math from last week. So many of you are missing delta math, along with the delta math for this one that is due Friday. So you could be working on delta math. You could be working in this packet on other problems, but you should be working on one of those things. Let me know if you need my help. Work with each other. Ask me questions if you need my help.